By 2035, and ideally well before 2035, politicians in the UK will no longer act in ways that are self-serving, untrustworthy, or incompetent. As a result, members of the general public will hold politicians in much higher regard and respect. That's the 14th goal in the set of 15 goals being advocated in the Technoprogressive Roadmap, published by the UK's Transhumanist Party. It's the first in a group of 2 goals in the sphere of significantly improved political flourishing. With progress towards both of these goals, society will increasingly be guided by the best of human insight in close, productive collaboration with the best of AI insight. Given the key role of politics in progressing the other goals set out in this roadmap, it's a major drawback that there is as much mistrust and dislike of politicians as is presently the case in the UK. Instead of encouraging and enabling collaboration between multiple different groups of talent and insight in the country, our politicians are creating more division and more hard-heartedness. The 2019 Ipsos Mori Veracity Index poll measured the level of esteem attributed to a variety of professions by members of the British public. Respondents to the survey were asked if they generally trusted people from specified professions to tell the truth. Politicians came at the very bottom of the list, with a positive rating of only 14%. This is worse than, for example, advertising executives, 17%, journalists, 26%, estate agents, 30%, business leaders, 35%, and bankers, 43%. For comparison, the profession of nurses came out best, with a positive rating of 95%, followed by doctors on 93% and teachers on 89%. As a further indication of the dire state of the reputation of politicians in the UK, consider the Edelman Trust Barometer findings for 2019. This contains the following evaluations by members of the public of various traits of politicians in the UK. Honest with the public, judged as a most important trait by 72% of respondents, but 58% said that few or none of the UK's political leaders show this trait. A good communicator, judged as a most important trait by 64% of respondents, but 38% said that few or none of the UK's political leaders show this trait. However, there's nothing inevitable about politicians being held in such poor regard. The European Social Survey regularly evaluates the level of trust in politicians in 32 countries in and around Europe. The UK generally ranks about 12th best in this survey, well ahead of countries such as Poland, Portugal, Ukraine, Croatia, and Bulgaria, but significantly behind Denmark, the top of the list, Switzerland, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Iceland. Let's remember the positive role that politicians can play in society, to deliberate, speak, and act on behalf of all citizens, protecting the community from exploitation by members of powerful subgroups. Politicians establish and then regularly review the operation of laws whereby members of society collectively agree to give up various potential freedoms and to accept specific responsibilities in order that society gains over all, with greater individual flourishing too. In this vision, to be a politician is to be a servant of the community. Measures that can increase the level of trust and respect for politicians include increased transparency to avoid any suspicions of hidden motivations or vested interests, automated real-time objective fact-checking so that politicians know any distortions of the truth will be quickly pointed out, the calculation and publication of reliability indexes for individual politicians based on the quality of their words and deeds as evaluated against agreed criteria, encouragement of individual politicians with high ethical standards and integrity, and enforcement of penalties in any cases where politicians knowingly pass on false information. To continue, easier mechanisms for the electorate to be able to quickly recall a politician when they have lost the trust of voters. Improvements in mental health for everyone, as covered in Goal 2, including politicians, thereby diminishing tendencies for dysfunctional behaviour. Regular psychometric assessment of politicians to highlight warning signs early. Diminished power for political parties to constrain how individual politicians express themselves, allowing more politicians to speak according to their own true conscience, and changes in the voting system to enable and encourage electors to vote for the candidates they most admire rather than feeling obliged to vote tactically. The proposed change in the voting system will move beyond the present outdated first-past-the-post voting system. Under the current system, voters frequently feel unable to vote for the candidate that most matches their own outlooks, fearing that it would be a wasted vote with the undesired side effect of letting a deeply disliked candidate win the election. However, under a system of ranked transferable votes, voters could indicate not only their first choice, but also a complete ranking of the other candidates. This change will allow more authentic voting. In parallel, a revision from single MP constituencies to larger multi-MP regional constituencies, as are already used for EU elections, will address the currently over-high barriers of entry being faced by new parties. As a result, it will enable more fluid changes within the set of political parties. Here are some important consequences of these changes in the political system. First, politicians will need to become better at working in coalitions and alliances with people from different parties. Of course, that's a good skill to develop. Second, politicians will have to demonstrate their own individual qualities rather than expecting to coast into Parliament merely by belonging to a popular party. Third, the power of big finance to control politicians should diminish, as individual politicians can take advantage of technology to communicate their messages to the electorate at low cost but high fidelity. Fourth, the pace of political change should increase, allowing regulations and incentives, such as subsidies, to update quickly in line with fast changes in the worlds of technology and business. Expect further changes in the capability and trustworthiness of politics from wider use of AI and other decision support tools as covered in Goal 15. To accelerate progress with Goal 14, 2 interim targets for 2025 are proposed. The first target is to replace the first-past-the-post election system, thereby eliminating a cause of a great deal of the ambivalence and hostility people feel towards their MPs. This step will, moreover, establish the groundwork for the other changes described earlier. The second interim target is to agree an understanding of the actual purpose of politicians, including the key role of the public sector in a mixed economy. This understanding will also include awareness of the role of industrial strategy, a concept that has often been unfairly maligned. Effective industrial strategy is vital to the success of many of the other goals in this roadmap. See other videos in this series for more information about the Technoprogressive Roadmap published by the UK's Transhumanist Party.